Hey guys, MC Fix-It here. We're on a 2006 Honda Ridgeline. We're going to be changing out this control arm. It is 3 bolts and well, 2 bolts and 1 castle nut. But I'm going to go through all the tools, supplies, everything you need to know how to do it. Please stick around for the whole video. Here are the tools and supplies you're going to need. You're going to need a jack, probably some kind of wedge, jack stands. You want 2 of those. You're going to want the parts. So for this control arm, it is really heavy. You are going to want to get for the control arm, you're going to want for the front right, it is an RK621545, and it is the same almost number for the front left. It is an RK621546. So the front right is a 5 at the end and the front left is a 6 at the end. And then you're going to want a series of hammers. I used a couple of different types of hammers, and maybe a mini sledgehammer or a full-size sledgehammer, a really long flathead screwdriver, kind of your more normal one, a 19mm wrench, something to go ahead and torque down your different bolts. You're going to also want just a standard wrench as well. Then we have a 22 and a 19mm. You're going to want some kind of pickle fork. This one is a pretty good one, nice solid. They said to buy one of these, so I did, and it was too short. So even has the ability to make it bigger. Did not work to pop off that ball joint, so I did have to use that. And with enough forcing, it does work. Some kind of pliers to get the cotter pin off. Lots of paper towels. Some kind of impact gun if you have one. If not, you can just use a regular breaker bar. You may want a torque stick as well for putting the tires back on. And make sure you got a couple of gloves around at least. These are all the tools and supplies. I'm going to jump right in and show you how to do this project. So I'm going to go ahead and show you kind of my workspace. I have tools and stuff set out. I have all the supplies next to the correct wheel. Make sure you have the correct supplies next to whatever you need. I like to go ahead and put a block in right away and kick that back to where it doesn't have any rollback. My driveway does slope that direction a little bit. Go ahead and unlock your vehicle, open it up, go ahead and pop open the hood and push down on the emergency brake. So now that we're under here, we're going to go ahead and jack up on this point. Your emergency brake is already on, and so the goal is to get the tires in the air, which you will be able to see just on both sides. And you just keep pumping this up. And then we'll go ahead and set the jack stands. So you're going to look for the frame of the vehicle. In fact, I'm going to jack it up just a little bit more. So you go ahead and take your jack stand and put it up under the frame of the vehicle. It's probably hard to see that angle, but it's up under there. Same thing, go ahead and put it up underneath. The reason we do that is we want that to really hold and support that well. So now we'll come back here and slowly let this down. And those jack stands will support the vehicle. Just like that. I did use a little block of wood, which that does sometimes get stuck on that piece right there. But you can see both wheels are off the ground, which is exactly what we want. They're supported with both of the jack stands. Make sure it's done that way. So to take off the wheel, 22 millimeter impact gun. Take all 5 lug nuts off, put off to the side. I like to hit the top of the wheel there. Normally gets it off nice and easily. And then roll that out of your way. This vehicle hasn't been driven in about a week or two because we got quite a few things we're going to be changing on it. So you will see a little bit of rust on there. That's totally fine. That'll come right back off. We've already changed out. You can see the strut here. And so we're going to tackle the tie rod. I'm sorry, the ball joint down here first. So the ball joint is right here, and it does have a castle nut on top of it. And you'll need a pair of pliers to get off the cotter pin. So you just pull the cotter pin straight out. And then the castle nut is sitting right on top of it. And it is a 19 millimeter. Gonna spray a little PB Blaster on it. I also like to put a tray underneath it so it doesn't drip all over my driveway. And sometimes these things are on there really tight. So it does take a little bit of creative. Just used a 21 millimeter on top of the 19 and just pulled it. You probably could use a breaker bar of some point if you have something big enough, like about 2 inches. But this is what I had, so this is what I'm using. And it works. Just takes a little bit of forcing it to happen. And that's a pretty big stud that it's on, so it does take quite a few turns to get it to go. So this will get this bolt off of the control arm. We probably will have to use some kind of tool to lift up on it. I got one of these that works pretty well. Nope, it's still too tight to take off by hand. Just be patient with it. You really can't get it off with a socket unless you got some kind of socket that I don't know about. You pretty much have to use a wrench like this. And if you found another way, put it in the comments. Tell me how you do it. If you found a way that's easier than this, but there it goes. That castle nut's almost off of there. And if you were confused by what I meant by a castle nut, it just allows that to go in there and sit and kind of lock it in place. So that's all it does. And it kind of looks like a castle, I guess. And so now that you have that, you do have to separate the ball joint out. And so there's tools like this. There's lots of different varieties of them, but the goal is to get around and be able to pop it off without damaging it. Now we are replacing this, so I'm not too worried. But if I wasn't replacing it, I would be a little more worried. I believe this is a 1 3/8 size, which is kind of a bigger size. Oh, I did that backwards, that's why. And so the goal is that you don't damage the plastic, but it allows it to pop up. And do be careful, some of them do have a grease fill-up spot on the bottom, depending on your make and model. And this has been on there for a long time, so this one's pretty hard to get off. So grab the pickle fork and put it right there. So if you have a sledge, sometimes that helps. Okay, I broke it. It didn't really drop much, but that's okay, but it does go up and down now. And you can see that right there. So after I loosen the other bolts, it should come off. So sorry, the first part of this video did not work, but this bolt has a section up here and a section here. So there's two different sets of threads you got to go through. And so it's a 19 millimeter. And I'm sorry I didn't show the beginning of this. My camera was not working. And so once you get it down to here, you just start spinning it. I am not clicking quick because I don't want to strip it. And just like that, that bolt was all the way up into here though. And they are pretty tough to get out. If you don't have an impact gun, you want a cheater bar and just take your time. But again, there's a set of threads here and here between the bushings that you got to be able to get through. So pretty much the exact same concept. Ooh, except my gun is not gonna fit. So, gonna have to go with the cheater bar method. I was hoping that wasn't the case. But so you use a breaker bar, and then I put a little cheater on it where I put a big long pipe. This one's about 4 foot long. You'll probably only see the end of it right now. And that's typically what I use. I might not be able to actually because of the angle on this until I get it up a little. Actually, that wasn't too bad. Once I kind of have it broke, because I can't use my impact, I'll just use a big, huge wrench on it and try to get it off the rest of the way. Actually, I think I'm going to go up here and try it, see if I have any room. This side has a lot more stuff on it, so nope, I can only go down below. And this is a pretty long bolt as well, so just take your time on it. I probably could do some kind of funky extension on this and use my impact, but I'll just take my time and do it this way. This is the same concept as the other bolt that I didn't get a good recording on. I'm not going super fast because I keep hitting my hand on the bottom of the brakes, and it kind of hurts when you do that. So take your time. Nope. I was thinking sometimes you can just simply pull them and it does work pretty well, but it's not working this time. Sometimes in the middle it doesn't have threads, but it seems like it's kind of getting stuck on something. Nope. It is coming out. It may not look like it is, but that's why impact guns are so great when you have them and they work. But this angle is just really bad. If this weld and the, I don't even know what that is, the frame, I guess, wasn't exactly where it was, we probably would have a little easier access to it. So just taking a little longer this way. And this is a big long bolt too, which doesn't help much. So there's the threads coming out now, so we got to be pretty close. Nope. So I just pulled this piece out of there, and now this one will come out as well. And it's just a matter of finagling it out of there. It's so close. Now, when you saw all the nast on here where it was just completely deteriorated, you can see those boots are just trashed. So we're going to replace that whole piece, which will be actually really helpful. So here is the new control arm, and it does have a cap on here. This one looks brand new, obviously, and has new rubber boots on it as well. And so it probably should go in a little easier than coming out. And I do want to be careful because I am going to do another part on this vehicle before I put all these together. So I'm just going to kind of leave it like that for now. And got another part to take care of, then I'll show you how to put all that back in. The audio failed on this segment, so I'm going to do a quick voiceover for this section. So go ahead and get that control arm nice and centered up in there. This is the only side I'm putting in for now. It does work a little better. Grab that 19mm bolt, it's the smaller of the two, and just begin to twist it in by hand. Also have a ratchet nearby with that 19mm socket on the end of it, so you do have the ability to tighten it down. Now you don't want to tighten it all the way, you're just going to grab that ratchet and just tighten it down, not even snug, because you do want to have a little bit of movement, but at least up in that second part that needs to hold it, because you have that two different segments where that will ratchet in there. And so just keep going. Once you get it started, sometimes I like to go to the top side. It does seem like it's a little bit easier than hanging out underneath the car, but to get it started, sometimes it's better to go actually underneath the vehicle so you have the best view possible for yourself, and then you kind of can come up top and finish it and go ahead and tighten that down. Again, you're not going to spec, you're just tightening it down. So it still has some movement availability in it, and you can just kind of finish up there, and then we'll move to the other part, and then we'll get the ball joint last. And now that that's tightened down, you can go ahead and grab the whole thing and swing it over. You're going to want to kind of push down a little bit too, so that ball joint goes down and you're not hitting anything, because that does have a rubber seal on it that you don't want to damage. So you do need to kind of push that down and over to the left at the same time. So you can do that, and I'll move the camera here in a second so you can see a little bit better of what I'm doing, but I'm just kind of shoving it in so that bolt can go in sideways there, and tighten that all down. So here is that other side. I've gone ahead and put the 20mm bolt just barely in there. Then I'm just going to put it in by hand tight, then grab that 21mm ratchet here in a second once I know it's all lined up. But it doesn't seem like it's working real well, so I'm going to go ahead and use a screwdriver to just kind of assist me in lining that up perfectly. And again, I'm just going to try to tighten it down by hand as I'm moving that screwdriver up and down to hopefully give me the best ability to put that in. And go ahead and get your ratchet and put that 21mm on it, and we're just going to go ahead and start ratcheting that down. This is a very long bolt, so I'll probably speed up the film or cut it, just because once you get started, it'll just keep going, and you'll do great. Sometimes you do have to pull it back in and put it back out like I did there, just to make sure it is perfectly lined up. You do not want to strip these bolts. They're not a very common one, so finding them, you normally have to go back to the dealership. Sometimes you'll get lucky at an auto parts store, but a lot of times you have to go to the dealership to get these bigger bolts, because they have different lengths and sizes and all that kind of stuff, and some tapering at the end. So make sure you have it on there nice and straight before you really get started. So once you've gotten that tightened down pretty good, you can go ahead and grab your torque wrench. We're going to set it to 119 foot-pounds of torque, and go ahead and tighten that down until you hear it click. When you hear it click, that should also kind of stop it a little bit, and that lets you know you're tightened down to spec. Again, that's 119 foot-pounds of torque. And this is that 19mm, and we're going to tighten this one down to spec as well, and it's 83.2. foot-pounds, and you're going to crank it down until it goes ahead and clicks just like the other side. This is quite a bit of foot-pounds of torque, but you do want to make sure you have that so you have the ability that it will not back out when you're driving. This is a very important feature on your vehicle to help stabilize stabilize your vehicle, the lower control arm. So you do want to make sure you have it up to spec. So a torque wrench is really important to make sure this job is done properly. And once you hear it click, you can go ahead and stop, and you're all done. So you're going to go ahead and make sure the ball joint is in the little socket, which it kind of just almost naturally fits in there. You may have to do a little bit of adjustment, and then go ahead and put the castle ring on. You're going to have a 19 millimeter. You do want to make sure that you get this pretty snug on there. It says that you're supposed to have 69 foot-pounds of torque, but that's really hard to guesstimate how to do that. If somebody does know how to do that, please put it in the comment section below. I'm just pretty much making it tight, and it does take a while to get this one on there. You just keep going at it and giving it a good hard oomph after it stops by hand, just to make sure we're getting close to that 69 foot-pounds of torque. But I don't have any kind of torque stick or wrench that would allow me to be able to do that. You don't really have any room except to put a wrench in there, so any help with that would be good. I'm not a professional mechanic, but I do a lot of my own repairs and help friends out as well. The next thing you need to do is go ahead and grab that little pin. I call it a cotter pin, but it's probably not technically one. And go ahead and slide that across it. And that just helps lock that castle nut in to make sure it doesn't back off. You do not want your lower control arm coming off in the middle of driving. So go ahead and grab your tire, and you're going to put it back up so you can complete this side of your control arm. And so you pick it up, and you're going to put it and place it on the studs properly just to make sure it's aligned. You kind of look through and just kind of stick it on just like that. And then you grab each one of the lug nuts, and I like to spin them on 4 or 5 times by hand to make sure I don't strip the lug nuts themselves or the studs. Replacing those studs is no fun. The lug nuts are pretty easy to change out. You can buy them pretty much anywhere, but those studs do take a long time to replace. I've done it on one vehicle already and don't look forward to ever doing that again. And I'm going to be using an impact gun, so it is important to make sure those are on there properly. I do have a torque stick. It's supposed to be 94. I believe this is a 100 foot-pound torque stick. I like to go in a star pattern as well, and so you're not just going around in a circle, but you kind of go back and forth just to ensure that they're on there properly. And you're going to want to do this multiple times until your torque stick completely stops. And so sometimes it's 3 or 4 different times around the entire tire. Then you are go ahead and done if you just wanted to do the one side of the control arm, but I encourage you to go ahead and do both of them. Then make sure you get in alignment afterwards. So after your car is resting on jack stands, which you can't see, they're underneath there, you can lower down your actual jack. You'll grab a 22 millimeter. You can either use a impact like this and just begin to take them off. Then go ahead and set these off to the side. And we'll go ahead and get the wheel off, and we'll put that to the side as well. To give you a little bit better angle on this, I went ahead and turned the wheel as far as I could, so you have just a little bit better access to see exactly what I'm doing on here. And we're going to go ahead and get this cotter pin out. And so it's going to come off the back side, but you do have to kind of pull it right here and push off the back side. This one looks very strange. Save this. It does not come with a new one of these. So put that off to the side someplace safe. Next thing we're going to have to do is break this nut. And this is a 19 millimeter. And we're going to have to go ahead and break this nut off here. And it's going to take a lot of leverage. There it goes. If you could get a socket in there, it would make it a lot easier. but you really can't. It's about the only way, and it does take a while to get this bolt off. So just be patient, take your time. I did end up putting my foot way up over here. I'm not sure if you saw that, to just give me a little bit of extra leverage. Put it in the wheel well where I wasn't going to break anything. Which may seem kind of overkill, but you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So this is a castle nut. They will give you a new one of these, and I would use the new one that is provided. And so we will be not reusing that, but we will be reusing that cotter pin. So you got to be creative. Use one of these and kind of just beat the snot out of it and push it up. These pickle forks do work well, but it does take, I think, a lot more energy and effort than what it probably should to pop this off. The other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and spray it real quick with a little bit of penetrating oil. So this is kind of an optional step, but sometimes it really does help to just get a little bit of penetration oil in there. Also, put something under your vehicle. That way it can drip into it and you don't get it all over your driveway or onto rocks that go down into the ground. And just let that sit for a few minutes if you need to. And we're gonna try again to knock this thing out of there and get it to release. Gonna use a sledgehammer as well. See if I can get in and under. Okay, that was it. Did you see that it finally released? It may not look like it released a lot, but that's all you need, is that to just release a little bit and you're done with the pickle fork. So this is a 19 millimeter, and you do want to make sure you get this one really straight up on there. You don't want to strip these. And that came right out just how it should. Then there's one bolt on the other side. And this one is a 22 millimeter. So we're gonna have to use a breaker bar because this right here, that frame is too close. And so this is gonna take a little more effort. I'm hoping to be able to use a swivel after we get it broken, but it is just way too tight. So you're probably going to have to stand up to get the extra force you need to be able to break this. There it goes. We'll do it a couple of times around and see if we can put a swivel on it. There it is. And then this whole assembly will just kind of bend out. And there it goes. That's the old control arm. You see how rotted that boot was, especially on that side. I do know sometimes you can get a press to put a new one in, but it really is a pain to do. So I do want to point out, you want to work on this side to begin with, and they do come with a new little boot cover that we will have to take off for that ball joint. So you'll go ahead and pick this up, and you want to kind of go ahead and get it started in that position that the other one was kind of already in. It is a heavy thing to kind of maneuver. And then I sometimes put a screwdriver in just to make sure I'm kind of nice and lined up. So I can go ahead and put it in, and then I try to line up the top as well and get it started by hand. You do not want to tighten this all the way down. You just want to get it started in the top so it has the ability to move around. It's a 19 millimeter, that's why that thing is not working. So again, I'm just going down to make this hand tight, and maybe not even hand tight, just up there so it still has the ability to move freely. You should see just a little bit of it coming out of the top. Then we'll go ahead and swing this over and begin to get it in place. So you will need to finagle this in place. So sometimes it helps to have a real long screwdriver or something like that that just kind of helps kind of get it in to where it needs to go in this socket. It allows it to kind of jump up in there, then you can kind of come underneath. Kind of do whatever you need to just make it get in there. And then once you're in, sometimes you do have to pull back and begin to get it lined up. And this one is your bigger bolt. This is a 22 millimeter. And do remember, I could not use my impact on this one. You may have a little different impact gun. I didn't set up my pneumatic air impact gun for this, just because I don't think I really needed it for this project. But that is something that may work. May have a little different head than my rigid over here does. And the goal is to get this nice and lined up so the bolt starts coming out the other side. Sometimes you can also kind of tap on it a couple of times. That sometimes helps get that bolt lined up. Which that actually did help. So again, I'm not going to tighten this one down all the way as well. I'm just going to begin to get it to where it's kind of snug and then work on that ball joint. This is also a great time if you haven't changed your oil. You pretty much have everything you need to change your oil within arm's reach in this project. Change your oil out. I still have about 3/4 of the life left, so I'm not going to do that on this one, but it's definitely something that you can do since you're right there and the drain plug is right back there as well. So now we're going to get to this ball joint. So you're going to have to push it down, remove the castle nut off the top of it, and it just fell on the ground. That's fine. Remove this plastic cap that just kind of helps protect everything. So once you get it pushed back in, it should pop right up on top. You do have that new castle ring that we are going to install. And go ahead and put that on hand tight. And that should be a 19 millimeter. Yes, it is. So this will take a minute to tighten down. There are specs to tighten this down, but you can't really get any kind of torque wrench or stick or anything like that on it. So you do just want to be careful to make sure it's tightened down. The actual specs call it for 61 foot-pounds of torque. Again, I can't really guesstimate what that is, except it's pretty tight after you've come to where it's kind of naturally stops by tightening it down. If you know a tool that you can tighten down with that is not crazy expensive, please drop a comment and let me know what that is. That'd be super helpful. but I just don't know of one. And again, this takes a few moments because you do just have to use your wrench. It's starting to get tight now. And that's real tight, so that's 61-ish foot-pounds-ish. You're going to go ahead and put back in your cotter pin. This might have a different name than a cotter pin, but it's pretty much the same concept as a cotter pin. And my hands are really greasy right now, so this thing is just slipping everywhere. And so that just went right into place right there. We're going to go ahead and tighten these down to spec now. So this bolt right here is a 22 millimeter, and it needs to be tightened down to 119 foot-pounds of torque. So this will take a little bit of time and energy because you don't really have much room to go with it. I'm going to try to see if I can go on the top with it because it's just no room at the bottom. Yeah, I have a little room up here. You do want to make sure you get these down to spec because you do not want these bolts coming off while you're driving. There it is. That was 119 22 millimeter. And then on the other side, 19 millimeter, 83.2 foot-pounds of torque. And you'll probably want a hand underneath to hold like I'm doing right now. These are quite a bit heavier than your standard ratchets. You do want to make sure you are tightened to spec. That click is what you wanted to hear. This one clicks really nice. So that is done. The other bolt is done. And your ball joint is done. Go ahead and get the circles lined up with the studs. I like to go ahead and put these on by hand. At least 3 or 4, maybe 5 spins to make sure we're not going to strip them when we use the 22 millimeter with the impact gun with a 100-pound torque stick on it. Go ahead and put it down. I do like to go in a star pattern when I do this. So at this point you can go ahead and remove those 2 jack stands. Again, they're just that extra safety measure. These jack stands, they're pretty basic ones. Most of them have some kind of lever that you pull up on and then they collapse down. Next thing you're going to do is go ahead and scoot this piece of cardboard back and out. Lower this down a little bit, turn it to the left just slowly, and everything kind of comes down. If this video was helpful, I encourage you to go ahead and like and subscribe. If you haven't commented and you have questions, please go ahead and do so. Thank you guys so much for watching.